Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hello everyone, it's Jesse Green here. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. It's wonderful to have your company for another episode of the show. Now, there's a saying that out of every adversity comes an equal or greater opportunity. And let's face it, COVID and the pandemic certainly threw up some adversity, but it also threw up some incredible opportunities as well. And one of those opportunities has been telehealth and particularly tele-dentistry. We all know that the technology for these types of service have been around for years, but what COVID did was it brought that to the top of mind or heightened the awareness in the minds of not just the patients, but the healthcare professions as well. And so we're seeing an uptake of telehealth and teledentistry across the globe. It's moving in a very strong upward growth trajectory. And so in this conversation I have with Brant, who is the founder of MouthWatch.com, we talk all about the elements of teledentistry. Now, Brant had his background building and manufacturing intraoral cameras, and what's been interesting is how he's followed the technology from a software perspective as well to build out this teledental platform. And so we talk about the opportunity that's available, not just for the patient in terms of, what can they have from the comfort of their own home, but what are the opportunities for the practice? Is it creating virtual operatories where we increase capacity without having the capital expense? What kind of procedures that we can take out of our appointment books and do from home? What's the uptake? How much work can we do in this way? What does that mean for the bottom line, for the revenue, for the profitability? And we're going to talk a lot about the platform and the technology and the practicalities of implementing this into practice. And of course, there'll be some case studies that we talk about as well. So I think this is where technology and opportunity really collide. I really believe that when we're talking about not just teledentistry, but other technologies such as artificial intelligence and the Internet of Everything and all of those things coming together, I think you're going to shape the future of dentistry. I think we're going to see dentistry done very differently in the future compared to how it's done today and has been done in the past. And I think that's going to lead to personalized healthcare. I think it's going to create better health outcomes. And I'm really excited about all these developments for the practice and for the patient as well. So without any further ado, let's hear from Brant Herman. I hope you enjoy this podcast as much as I enjoyed recording it. Here he is. Brant Herman, all the way from New Jersey. Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Great to be here.
Well, mate, you are the founder and CEO of MouthWatch.com. And of course, MouthWatch is one of those companies that has really, in the recent years come to real prominence as a result of the technology and of course the pandemic has brought a lot of things into focus, and teledentistry is one of those trends that I think has really kind of gathered a lot of momentum and a lot of steam. I'm sure the technology has been around for years, but there's this awareness now around it. I'm just wondering how you found your way into this space and what do you see for the future there?
Yeah, we never expected a pandemic to be part of our business plan, but it definitely crystallized the understanding among a lot of dentists about how teledentistry could be used, aside from maybe an earlier understanding, which was a little more limited to public health programs and outreach efforts. So my background, I'm a serial entrepreneur prior, and I come from a family of dentists. And I had exited my prior company about 12 years ago, and was helping out in my father's dental office with some rebranding and just general, let's spiff up the practice. And there was a moment where a patient had come into the office and she had a great smile and she was dressed to the nines. And then with the use of an intraoral camera, she saw behind her lower anteriors just a ton of calculus buildup. She screeched out loud and I walked back and kind of saw, and that led to this idea of, wow, if we can help patients understand a better view of what they can't see in the mirror at home, and they could communicate that more regularly with their dentist, we might be onto something. So the origin was really about patient-generated recall.
Yeah.
Let's have patients understand the importance of oral health, not wait for the postcard or the text message, and maybe come in more frequently. And that's where we started. So we developed an intraoral camera. We built an early platform version of Teledent. and launched where it was really about practices connecting their patients more effectively to not only the visual information that helps them improve care, but the platform that would help them communicate with their providers.
So it sounds like you started out almost as a hardware company, and now you've gone into, I guess, software and platform, particularly with Tele-Dentistry or Teledent. I'm curious to understand from the business point of view. Yeah, I'm always curious about the business point of view. What were some of those early challenges? Because I don't imagine you suddenly go, "Hey, I'm just going to build an intraoral camera." Guess what? Yeah,
right.
I'm going to go to the garage and knock one up on the weekend. How did you figure out all that?
What we noticed was when we launched, it's just that painful series of conversations where we're launching with the hardware component, the software component, and talking to a lot of dentists who are, saying everything ranging from I don't need to talk to my patients any more than I do, right? Like they come in regularly and they're really good about that. And then also seeing the reaction was we started getting customers who were buying the cameras and trying to integrate them into their in-office X-ray software and kind of leaving the software to the side. And then we saw programs or practices or oral health programs that were using the software, and the cameras helped them, but they were breaking the software to make it meet their needs.
Yep.
So you had programs that we were trying to get dentist to patient, and they were saying, I don't need multiple patients. I need dentist to hygienist. I need dentist to specialist. So it was really enlightening to see practices buying the cameras, and the price point, because we were originally oriented toward kind of the dental patient, was much more affordable than what was out in the marketplace. So in the US, the intraoral cameras that were of comparable quality were $3,000, $4,000, and we were out at $300.
Wowzers.
So we started having practices saying, like, what's wrong with this? And they saw, this is a great camera. It does everything I need it to do. So instead of having the one camera across 8 operatories, I'm going to put 8 cameras in my office. And now every appointment we're documenting, we're showing patients, we're able to support insurance claims more effectively. So we really had to do that pivot, and kind of we're at that point of saying, look, let's follow the software use where the software is being used, and let's support dentists who want an affordable, high quality camera that works with whatever X-ray software they're using. So we saw that kind of divergence. And then the nice part is, when we were following the teledentistry path for improving innovative practice approaches, so hygienists going out into the community, seeing patients in nursing homes, in elder care settings, in schools, they still needed the camera. It was the best way for them to document and communicate back to the dentist. So we pursued those 2 paths, and we really gave ourselves, from the business perspective, the runway to learn the market of teledentistry while our cameras were taking off. And it's been a great ride. I mean, our cameras are really award-winning. We've just launched a high-definition camera last year. We're in over 40,000 practices with our cameras, and we've really seen the nascence and kind of birth and development of teledentistry far before the pandemic. And then we were really in a good position when globally practices were forced to close and they were shut down for emergencies only. Then Teledent became an obvious solution because suddenly the need was there, and rewarding personally and professionally, because those head scratching conversations of, I don't need to see my patients if they're at home and they can just call the office. Suddenly there was a real tangible grasp of it, and all of the supporting information and landscape came together of state practice acts and legislation allowed for it. Insurance policies were reimbursing providers for it. So it was kind of that perfect storm in the midst of, a pandemic, but it really opened all of the stakeholders and decision makers on the legislative side and on the reimbursement side to allow this to improve care, improve connection to care. And I think what we've seen as this lasting value is open providers and practice owners' eyes to all of the value it creates beyond the, to us, narrow case of emergency triage.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think, I like following technology and have been following around technology platforms for years, but you're absolutely spot on in the sense that the technology has always been there, but the awareness that came as a result of the pandemic has been huge and has really kind of pushed it up that to the forefront of people's minds. For the people listening to the podcast, some of them may be aware of teledentistry, or I'm sure they're aware of it, but perhaps they're not aware of where it fits in, what size opportunity is it. Is it kind of a bit of a bit player on the side, or could this become front and center of their practice? And so I just wanted to just get an appreciation of the opportunity that's available for the practice owner, but equally for the patients as well, in terms of what sort of services could be provided that way. I'm curious to ask your perspective on the opportunity itself.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think what different from telemedicine, where you may be able to completely replace an office visit, especially in certain specialties, through virtual care. So mental health has seen really great success since the pandemic, where my entire counseling session can be taken care of virtually and I never have to go into an office. Then I think there are these other specialties and areas where it's a complement to it. It adds some convenience. And I think that's where dentistry starts to align, is we can make our in-office appointments much more effective. We can take certain aspects of, let's say, the patient care journey and move them to virtual.
Yes.
So I think for the private practice owner or the group practice owner to understand that there's a lot of appointments that come into those doors where you don't have to do a tactile exam. You can visually evaluate. You might have a new patient consult or a cosmetic consult or a post-operative follow-up or an oral health instruction case. The time that you're using just chatting with the patient about the treatment plan, which is taking up a very expensive and potentially profitable operatory, could shift till 7 p.m. maybe, or 6 p.m. when you could have the follow-up conversation, and you might be able to talk to your patient and their significant other who's a part of that investment in care decision or understanding it, right? And so there's all of these touch points. We have a great, quote from a client who said, people need to understand that dentistry can be done with them, not always to them.
Yes.
So we want to really improve care by saying, look, your follow-up can be done virtually, and you're going to be more receptive to it because you're not sitting half numb in a chair, hoping to go, nervous about the bill. There's all of these things that start coming together where they've had a much better experience with the dentist. If it's prior to their actual physical appointment, maybe the prescription was called in. They know about pre-medication. They can ask those questions that they forget about when they come into the office. And it doesn't always have to be done directly with the dentist. It can be done with someone from the office or a treatment plan coordinator or anyone in that staff that really helps kind of wrap that patient, we think, in a much better experience.
We all know that adding physical floor space, plumbing, dental chairs, even if it's a consultation room, it all comes at significant cost. And this is a really nice way of adding capacity without having to add infrastructure of the physical variety. And so I really, when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, well, that's a fantastic opportunity. But the other opportunity I'm thinking as well, and I'm not sure if this fits with the model, but what I'm thinking about is if you've got a older clinician potentially, maybe you've got an oral dental hygienist or an oral health therapist here in Australia who may want to work from home 1 or 2 days a week or half a day a week or whatever it is. I guess there's the opportunity to work remotely, which has really never been entirely possible in dentistry until this technology has been around.
No, it's an interesting point. We've had a lot of doctors during the pandemic are like, wait, everyone's working from home, everyone's wearing sweatpants, and they're not getting dry cleaning anymore. And what about me? I still have to go into an operatory. So I think it's a great way. And we've seen programs, especially group practices, where you might have a dentist who's sold off the practice and they're transitioning out, and now they want to go in 1 day a week.
Yep.
But they can still supervise, mentor, communicate with the patients that are going in, and they make it virtual. And that's where it's great, in that a lot of stuff we've seen for really pioneering practices in the US and how, a preventive care visit is billed is there's the services that the hygienist performs, and then there's the evaluation, which is done by the dentist.
Similar to Australia.
So the dentist can do that part virtually. They can do that asynchronously. So if your hygiene team is documenting with photographs, with radiographs, and making clinical notes, we see a lot of times dentists are simply looking at all of that information, all of that clinical data, and now they're doing the exam virtually, and they could just write a summary, clinically documented, but share that with the patient. And if there is a need, and I think this is an interesting point, if they identified a need for a filling or any restorative service, they're rescheduling that patient anyway.
Yeah.
They're not planning an hour buffer in case we find something. So you could shift that, have that virtual consult, 5 minutes, explain it with the patient, and then they're coming in and having kind of a more right-sized follow-up appointment as well. So, yeah, we do see dentists able to, I think, embrace a little bit more flexibility by having it and still maintain that level of service. I think to the first point you brought up, we talk about the virtual operatory, right? Like, what procedures can I do in my virtual operatory? And what's great is because of the success we've seen in our experience, we've seen clients that are shifting about 7%, and their goal is 10% of their appointments to virtual.
Wow.
So when you start thinking as a practice owner, what if I could shift, 10% of my operatory time outside of my office hours or outside of physical time? Now I could do higher value restorations. I could see more patients more effectively and increase revenue without the capital investment in building another operatory.
Yeah.
Right. And add on top of that, what we've seen is staffing challenges since the pandemic.
Yes.
Where it's hard to find that additional hygienist or that additional dentist. So now you've created that efficiency. And the nice part is you're not creating efficiency that patients don't want. You're creating efficiency that patients are craving of, if I could just talk to you for 10 minutes and I don't have to leave my desk at work, I'd much rather that than taking 2 hours off to come in, sit in a waiting room, so I think that's where we really help practices reveal a lot more of that bottom line value in addition to meeting, I think, the softer value of an improved patient experience, a happier provider experience through teledentistry.
Yeah, we've had a lot of our clients really embrace virtual case presentations, and they've found that that's been really well received. They haven't been using particularly high-tech platforms, mainly Zoom and the like, but even with that, it's been really well received by the patients. The patients are loving it. The cases are getting accepted at the same rate that they would be otherwise, and it's wonderful. So it sounds to me like I think that this is going to be a very integral part of dental practice moving forward. And you've spoken about 7% moving to 10%. Is that kind of where you see the upper limit, or do you think that as technology continues to advance, there'll be more and more things that we can do? What do you see as the future, beyond that? I think some of the non-invasive diagnostic tools, it's going to be a ways off before that's coming into the home for fluorescence and decay. But we are seeing some really cool technology. There's a great thing coming out of Australia where it's a caries identification tool that right now needs to be applied by a dentist, but it's really a spot topical. And if you start looking at a really interesting approach to preventive care, if you could have a patient supervised by a dentist or a hygienist applying this and then starting toward a path of remineralization, where maybe you're limiting the restorative, but you're able to identify decay, and it's early enough in the disease process that it could be handled with a remin approach and high fluoride toothpaste and some things, especially with pediatric patients. Yeah.
We've even seen some programs, and they took off during the pandemic, of I'm going to send a fluoride varnish to mom, but the hygienist is going to remotely supervise mom's application of the fluoride varnish.
Yeah.
And so you had all of these really cool ways that when we're here, especially in the US, we're seeing increasing number of patients on Medicaid, so public insurance.
Yes.
And a decreasing number of providers and dentists who accept Medicaid.
Yes.
So you're looking at different models that really help you keep access and increase access to care in an earlier point of the disease process. So you're bringing more patients into dental homes without physically having to bring them in. And then when they are coming in, you kind of know more effectively what they need, how much time they're going to need. And another cool benefit that we see is you've mitigated and reduced anxiety that some patients feel, because the first place they're doing it and talking to their dentist is from the comfort of their home. Yeah. Maybe it's a child, but with their mom or a caregiver. And we see this a ton in special needs cases or geriatric cases where see the patient where they are, and then we can figure out the best way to get them into care when they need to come in.
Yeah, I think that's going to be phenomenal. What I'm really keen and interested to understand, from a future tech point of view, is when we start getting into diagnosis at home using machine learning or artificial intelligence, or even some sort of biometric markers, the Internet of Everything kind of routine, and how that might interact with teledentistry. Have you guys had any thoughts about that, or is that a little further down the road? But where do you see any of that space evolving?
Yeah, so one thing that we're launching in early 2023 is we have seen over the years that sometimes the challenge with teledentistry for us is we need our clients, we need practices or programs that are willing to embrace it and implement the delivery of care through teledentistry. What we're doing now is we're launching something called Dentistry One. Mm-hmm. And Dentistry One is a nationwide network, starting in the US, of virtual first dental care. So we'll have dentists supported by care advisors who are dental hygienists who can help with oral health coaching and education, care coordination, benefits navigation. We're going to bridge that gap. So a patient who hasn't come in, their first touch point can be virtual. And then we're going to help route them into an office as needed, or we can engage them. And we're also going to pull from medical data. So we're going to see the diabetic patient, the pregnant patient, and kind of move that patient into oral health care, which, especially in the US, is very siloed. It's hard to know from a medical system when a patient who would benefit on the medical outcome to route them into dental care. But to your question, part of what we're looking to do with that is incorporate into Dentistry One artificial intelligence for visual identification of inflammation, recession, and also start tying in things like salivary diagnostics and a range of other services. So now we can really help you understand your specific needs, support you in those, and then collaborate with dentists who get it and see kind of, okay, cool, this patient's really owned a lot. And look, I've done salivary diagnostic tests and I'm in a world of dentists. And that was one of the most motivating results I've ever gotten of, okay, what do we need to do? But that's something it's hard for a dental office to really maintain that level of engagement with their patient. You don't want the patient calling you every month of, hey, like, can I send you some pictures, check my flossing, see if it's helping? But we can make that happen and really keep your patient more tied into your practice.
Yeah, I really see it as a really good practice builder as well. And as you say, a very good retention exercise. But from the point of view of customized and personalized healthcare, I think what a fantastic outcome. And I'm really excited about what the future of technology and healthcare coming together looks like. I think that there's going to be a lot of, obviously we all know there's going to be a lot of really cool changes, but how that impacts dentistry, I think, is going to be phenomenal. And I can't wait to see it. I guess one of the questions that people are going to be having is, well, Brant, this kind of sounds really good, but does that mean I've got to give every patient an intraoral camera to take home, or are they going to suddenly be walking around with one of these things in their back pocket, or how do we how do we equip people with the right technology to make it accessible? And then I'm curious to ask about the platform itself, because I know it's got some video calling and other functionality around note taking and imaging and so on. So I'm wondering if you can just talk us through the technology and the practicalities of it, please, mate.
So we are a hardware manufacturer too, so we would love it if every patient, and you wanted to buy one for every patient that you have.
What do you want for Christmas? An intraoral camera.
Exactly. So we found that does work in certain cases where it's more advanced disease state, or it's more making medical dental integration happen by putting an intraoral camera in a school nurse's office or in a nursing home, right? So that's where we see that happening. A lot of what we're able to accomplish is with your smartphone. Like, there's never been such high quality cameras as your iPhone, your Android, and we keep discovering and pursuing different ways to make that really easy. Frankly, one of the challenges is the patient who is so committed to their oral health that they're going to have an additional device to support imaging it's really slim. So it's more about one, really quality images that come from your smartphone, live consults. And what's cool with our platforms, both Teledent and with Dentistry One, is the provider can snap images. So even if it's a little bit awkward, you're actually moving the webcam or moving your phone where it's most likely the provider could see, and then the provider can snap the image, which you both have access to. And I think that's where AI starts coming into play and really helping support a better acquisition model for them. So we still see the cameras as primarily being in clinical settings, in medical settings, as a tool to help make a better referral and better documentation. But patients can get a lot done with that image. And I think it's also that point of, we're not keeping patients out of a practice.
No.
We're trying to tee them up in a more effective way so that you have an idea, you know what it is. And, I grew up around, dentists in the 80s where you're trying to basically say, like, move your tongue on your rear molar. Is it rough or is it smooth? And you're trying to do telephone triage. And so having the smartphone camera, being in a live video call, does help with that, or asynchronously, which is really convenient. Patients can take a whole bunch of images, right? There's no cost to film. So send as many as you need to, and we're going to now help guide it. In the future, I think what's great is you could have AI start stitching together, right, frames from a video, doing some identification, doing some visual diagnostic. And another cool thing we're really excited about is when you start being able to pull something from like a health information exchange, when you're pulling whole patient data, tying it all together. So now what's the engagement approach to a diabetic patient where we know they had inflammation, or they're pre-diabetic, or they had a cardiovascular valve replacement? You could do all of these things to start really customizing and personalizing their preventive care and their screening plan so that you're identifying stuff earlier. Really, I think getting a better picture of the information, the data, but not just visual data, that really helps that patient have a good outcome.
Yeah, and as you say, it's not just treating the teeth, it's treating the person and all that entails. And I think your point that you made earlier was also really worth re-emphasizing. That is, we're not trying to keep patients out of the practice. We're actually hoping that when they come to the practice, it's a more meaningful and purposeful appointment, and we're using that time as wisely as possible, and we're not dragging people into the practice for things that we could do at home in a more comfortable environment for the patient. So I think it is that kind of hybrid model that you spoke about at the very beginning. So Brent, I'm just wondering about case studies, or if you've got any, I guess, data or anecdotes about how this has worked for patients and practices thus far. And again, going back to my original question, which was around the opportunity for the practice owner, particularly, so that, if this is something that they want to roll into their practice, they've just got a bit of an idea of, what's actually happening right now. Yeah,
so we have a whole bunch of different data depending on the type of use. So we've seen, let's say in private group practices or traditional practices, it's really about that efficiency that they're able to reveal, the number of appointments they can shift when it's a team sport. You've got to have your front desk totally bought into it. being able to make the easy invitation to the platform for the patient so that they may not have to come in, and help them understand that approach. And I think, it's kind of those baby steps. So is it virtual case presentation outside of the practice walls? Is it the high success procedure where you can be higher touch with patients without having to physically have them in your chair?
Yeah.
So the post-op check-in or the evaluation, sharing some educational materials. And then I think kind of on new patient consults, really what we've seen, which is great, is that for practices where they're having a virtual consult with a representative of the practice, it doesn't even have to be the dentist. They are much more likely to be patient if their appointment is 2 weeks out.
Yes.
Right? To wait because they've had a touch point, and they're able to come in, but they've built a relationship enough to establish trust and know that they can come in. And I think another interesting point is we also see just generally across all healthcare, dental included, that the number of cancellations and no-shows decreases when telehealth is an option.
Wow.
So just knowing that you have it on your website, you're promoting it in your social media, that patients know it's available and they can talk to you if needed or schedule something, that does help, save you that time. And then if you have the patient who cancels, cool, you go and you're able to do a few treatment plan presentations, share them with patients, and kind of schedule for the future. So I think that's really how we see it. And I think, yes, the pandemic did reveal right away, if there's an emergency, you can create a better experience for the patient and for yourself. When someone has that urgent need to talk to you, okay, it's much easier and it's more secure and compliant than saying, oh, FaceTime me.
Yeah.
Or let's jump on a quick Google Meet. So these are the things that I think is a tool in the tool belt of the practice to really serve, I think, a patient with increasing expectations for convenience.
Yes.
That's where we really see it coming into play. So kind of across the board, a whole bunch of different use cases. When we look at case studies, I mentioned some of the private practice approaches. We also see kind of innovative practices. I think in Australia, you'd find it too. When it's a really rural population, you can invite them. So let's know before you drive the hour and a half to come in, let's do as much as we can prior, right? Let's get your health history. Let's make sure we're right sizing. And we even see that happen from, let's say, a community medical center where there is no dental, but there's at least a clinic. That can be the site that makes the referral to a practice. So if you have any listeners who are practices looking for new patient referrals, right? They're always looking for new patients.
100%.
You can start tapping into community touch points that previously would be a little bit difficult. And what are you going to do? Give your business card to a nursing home? That's fine. But this becomes a way of like, I'm available for your residents or for your students or for your employees virtually. And then they can come in for, the restoration or treatment that they might need.
100%. It's really interesting, Brant. My early career was as a dentist in the Navy. And so part of my job as a Navy dentist was to get onto ships and go traveling around on the ocean and all the rest of it. But obviously there was more ships than dentists, and not every dentist had a ship at any given moment in time. But they did have medical staff there. So they'd have some medics and sometimes a doctor, but often qualified medics. And so I think that, even in the Defence Forces, all of those sort of places that need to operate remotely, I think there's huge application there. In Australia, we've got massive mines and offshore oil rigs and all those sorts of places. And I mean, that's just obviously one little micro application, but I think that we're going to get more and more comfortable with this, and we're going to see more and more applications emerge as time progresses. So I'm super excited about this. I think this is really at the cusp of what we're going to be doing. No pun intended, but definitely what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, I think, our goal is really making dental care touch points available everywhere.
Yeah.
So whether that's my smartphone or it might be an intraoral camera in a clinic or on a rig, or, we have some where kind of it's a trucking fleet. And so there's a practice that's got the relationship there, and it's just they're talking to their dentist. They understand that. And wherever I need to be, if I can at least create access to the provider, that's a huge step. And then I think the next thing that we're really excited about is moving into what if we could do a more effective bridge from those healthcare systems that are seeing a lot more patients, where the outcomes and cost savings of treating a patient completely and giving them the right oral health care supports and improves the outcomes across, I think the latest list we saw was 62 diseases.
Yeah, wow.
Right. So all of those patients, let's loop them in. And if they don't have a dentist, let's get them a dentist. Let's give them that virtual touch point, and then we're going to stay in touch with them and take care of them.
Yeah, loving it. And that's where the Dental One network really comes into play as well, which will be fantastic to have that network of providers that can support all of that. I'm just buzzing with excitement around this topic. I think there's going to be so many applications, as I said a moment ago, that yet to even be thought about, that will become mainstream in a very short space of time. And as we said at the top of the hour, this type of dentistry or this type of technology has always been here, but now the awareness, the appetite, the desire is there in a way that perhaps wasn't there. And, while I wouldn't wish the pandemic upon any of us, this is perhaps one of the silver linings that's come out of it. So I think that's amazing. Brant, if we were going to wrap up our conversation today and people want to find out more about getting on board with MouthWatch, how do they go about it? If someone's saying, really, what's my first step to get involved in teledentistry? What should they be doing? What should they be thinking about? How do they reach out to you for more information?
One thing we found is really there's so many different use cases. And if you put in front of someone the Swiss Army knife with 90 tools, they're not going to know which one to use. Yeah. So it's really helpful to talk to us so we can help understand your practice and what are your goals and see how teledentistry can fit into your practice and your program. Our website is mouthwatch.com. We sell our cameras there. We sell Teledent there. And then we also launched dentistry.one. So instead of .com, it's .one. And you can go to that website to learn about the virtual care network. And yeah, just set up a time to talk to us. And the teledentistry is really just this consultation of kind of sharing what our platform can do. It's really telehealth optimized for dental care. So it's got everything you would need for kind of the full patient journey. And another point we didn't even really touch on, and not to tail off, but even referrals. You start getting into a dentist referring and having a streamlined way to make sure that the referral from the general dentist to the surgeon and back to the general dentist is really not only streamlined between the two providers, but also that the patient has a voice in it and you're lifting that burden, right? We're just so tired of, we're going to give the business card and now you're on your own to go figure out the rest of it. So yeah, come to mouthwatch.com. We'd love to share with you. Our cameras are available there. We have some distributors in Australia for the intraoral cameras, and we're here to help.
Well, that's wonderful. So, ladies and gents, I think this is a massive opportunity. I think there's some really good stuff that comes out of this. As Brant said, head across to mouthwatch.com. So that's watch with a T, not mouthwash, just for clarity to make sure my diction is clear. So head across to mouthwatch.com and check out the Tele-Dent product and the other things there as well. So, Brant, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to everyone about, I think, a tremendous opportunity and the future of dentistry, and really grateful that you're here, mate. So from all of us here at Savvy Dentist, Merry Christmas to you. I hope you have a good time of it.
Yeah, to you too. Happy New Year, and thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast. For more episodes, go to drjessiegreen.com/savvydentist. And to discover how to build a high-performance dental practice, visit drjessiegreen.com and download the free report.